Welcome to the Domain Name Wire podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Alleman, and this is episode number 572. One company that's grabbed a lot of domain investors' attention over the past year is Unstoppable Domains. The company started life as a Web3 naming company, but is now an ICANN accredited registrar and plans to apply for top-level domains through ICANN this year. So far, the company has won customers through below-cost pricing on .com domain names, but it believes it has built a solid domain name registration platform that will keep customers on board even when prices eventually go up, which the company expects to happen in the next couple of months. On today's show, Unstoppable Domains CEO Matthew Gould talks with me about the registrar and the company's plans for new top-level domains. First, a word from our sponsor. Our sponsor this week is Salve.com and its low-cost backordering. Backorder.com domains for only $10.87 and .io domains for only $26.99. Salve is particularly successful with .co and .io domains. Just looking through this week's list, there are a lot of nice .io and .app domains available in expired domain auctions. Sign up for an account and start saving money on your back orders. Go to salve.com/DNW/backorder. That's SAV.com/DNW/backorder. Let's run through some news in the domain business from the past week before we chat with Matthew. A familiar face is back in the domain industry at a new company. After leaving GoDaddy about a year ago, Bob Mountain took a year off to climb mountains, literally. Now he has joined D3, where he will lead the company's business development efforts. D3 partners with domain registrars to tokenize domain names. Bob seems like a good fit given his prior work expanding the Afternic domain distribution network. Well, shares of GoDaddy have been struggling over the past 13 months, and last Thursday they dipped below $100. They've already lost 20% this year as of last Thursday, following a 37% fall in 2025. There's no one thing that at least I can attribute this decline to. It could be that the stock price just got ahead of where the company's financials and fundamentals were. There could also be some consternation about how AI will impact its business. On the cyber squatting front, the government of Monaco has lost a UDRP it filed against Monaco.com. This was an interesting case because it involved a domain name that was on a payment plan at escrow.com. Ultimately, the panel found that both the seller, the buyer, and escrow.com had rights or legitimate interests in the domain, and none of them registered it in bad faith. There was a reverse domain name hijacking case last week for fin.com, that's FIN.com. That shouldn't come as a huge surprise that this case resulted in reverse domain name hijacking. You can read a story with all the details on January 29th. Another notable reverse domain name hijacking case last week involved Etihad Airways, the flag carrier for United Arab Emirates. That involved the domain name Etihad.ai. Speaking of .ai, the government of Anguilla has announced that it has surpassed 1 million .ai domains under management. My back-of-the-envelope calculations suggest that's about $5,000 of domain registration revenue per resident. And finally, domain registrar Namecheap has sold Namebase, a company it acquired around the start of 2022. Namebase is a marketplace for handshake domains, which are alt-root Web3-based quote-unquote domain names. Web3 naming platforms like this have been on a downswing. There's more news at domainnamewire.com, but now let's chat with Matthew. My guest this week is Matthew Gould. He is a founder of Unstoppable Domains. Matthew, welcome back to the show.
Glad to be here again. It was also fun hanging out with you guys at ICA this past week. A lot going on in domaining.
Yeah, for sure. And, I want to talk about the registrar side of the business first. One of the things that ICA members got by going to the conference was a $500 credit to use on Unstoppable, which is a promotion I've never seen any registrar do before. And obviously you're doing a lot to get domain investors on Unstoppable Domains. You made a splash last year with low-cost registrations, the $5 Fridays, which became $5.99 Fridays. So what kind of success are you having with these promotions and drawing domain investors to your platform?
We beat all of our goals last year for registrations. At the beginning of last year, we had less than 20,000 domain names registered. And, because we just got our license, the Q4 the following year. And we set a goal for ourselves, like, let's try to get to 250,000 domains under management by end of year. We got well over 500,000. I think we were actually over 600,000 in the last year. We're over 750,000 as of this recording, and we are hoping to be over 1 million domains under management here in the next couple months. And that's, where we wanted to be. I feel like this is definitely a scale business. You have to have a certain size in order to be able to have a good offering. And then, we've been running really strong promotions for users because we have a lot to learn in the space. And so I think one of the great things about being at ICA and going to, NamesCon back last November, I think our name is out there in the domain community now, which is very helpful. People know who we are. They know that we're an ICANN registrar now, and they can see the progress we've made the past 12 months, improving across a whole lot of different features on the platform. And so I think it's been hugely successful for us. Going into this year, we are raising prices across the board, like you saw for transfer ins and also on .com registrations. We won't be running the same strong promos we did last year, although we still have, I think, very strong offerings. And we're going to start competing more and more on product with end users. And that's just a normal transition for our business as we're pivoting out of our crypto roots and really focusing in on domain investors and looking at this as like a digital asset investment space. And so that transition is still ongoing.
Right. Yeah. I mean, obviously, the low cost brought in customers, but you can't just do that forever. You have to you have to create a good product, right? So tell me, what do you think Unstoppable offers through its registrar offering that appeals to domain investors and makes it a good product, a good choice for them, regardless of if it's $5 a name or the more typical $11 a name?
I do think we finally reached world-class management functionality for people with larger portfolios. Like if you have more than 500 plus domains, it's really getting good as far as industry competitiveness. We also have listing across all the major marketplaces now, which we did not have a year ago. So we are a fast transfer partner for Afternic, right? So it's easy to list on Afternic and then also Pseudo as well. And we then have self-brokerage options for you. So if you have to park your domain somewhere, you want to park them somewhere that you can get on Afternic and Sea-Doo at the same time, make that very easy. It's very easy to manage the domains. And then it's also great if you have additional tools to maybe do some selling on the side, right? Maybe so that you can have pay lower fees to sell direct to customers. We're building out those pieces this year. We'll continue to improve. So I think as of today, we are top of the industry for just interacting with a registrar and then having the core integrations with the major marketplaces that you need. And from here, we can really start adding on additional end user benefits. And we're exploring exactly what those are this year. So we were actually at ICA. I think I was on stage and I said to people, it's like, hey, if you want us to build something specific for you, please tell us, because we're actively in the market looking for what are the features that domainers need in a registrar product to make their lives a little bit better. Also talk to others in the industry. It was great to see Adam Darpan from Adam there, potential integrations with them. There were some registries there as well. We'll continue to offer strong promotions with those people with different TLD endings. We're just expanding out into the business this year and finding how we can create value for domainers.
So one thing you have right now, you do have low cost kind of landing page sales. You call it kind of self-brokering, but you can put up an Unstoppable landing page, and in that, if someone buys the domain through there, it's a very low commission that you guys charge for processing the payment and such. On the marketplace panel that I led, you mentioned that from a marketplace perspective, you're trying to figure out the domain investor to domain investor kind of market, as opposed to necessarily the end user, right? Which I assume comes through Afternic and Pseudo and all that sort of stuff. So what do you mean by that? How do you envision this?
Well, so there's a couple major pieces that we need to put together, but one is like account-based access, and that's just a fancy way for saying we need to allow brokers to be able to sell domains for you through your account. And so more broker tools coming into the platform. Wholesale is another big one. I think there are some good wholesale marketplaces out there, but I think that it's an area where a lot of engineering and product automation can help out. Most domainers do domainer-to-domainer transactions. They just push and they trust each other, right? But we can maybe build better tools around that. So if you want to sell a set of 40 or 50 domains out to somebody else, make that transaction a little bit smoother and maybe able to be done between less trusted parties, right? Because most people do domainer-to-domainer right now. It's two guys who know each other, but if we can secure that, maybe we can make those transactions happen. And they have to be low cost, because domainer to domainer is not going to pay a 30% Afternic commission. So that also feeds into kind of where we are right now, trying to be a low cost model. So that's how I'm thinking about it. We also have some other tools under development for wholesale that we're hoping to add additional data in to domain names. Appraisals are obviously something that everybody is working on. We're not building our own appraisal system, but partnering with others to use their appraisal systems. GoDaddy has one, Adam.com has one. Bringing that into the marketplace a little bit better is an area of focus for us. And there's some other ideas around that as well, like SEO type analytic things to bring on.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I would say investor to investor right now, Adam does have a marketplace for that, but it's Adam has a marketplace for that. A lot of people post them to domain forums or that sort of thing. So there is a lot of opportunity, I think, there to kind of surface what that inventory is on investor to investor. So it's interesting to hear how you're working on that, because it's definitely not a focal point of any other companies in the space.
When we did the market map for who's doing what, that was an area where we saw opportunity to try to do some innovation because no one else was working it. And frankly, it's because it's low margin. Yeah. But we're on the tool side. Like, we like to build tools. I don't want to have a large sales team on supplement domains, right? So trying to bring on salespeople to work our leads. Other platforms do that, basically all the other platforms do it, but that's not for us. And so we have to figure out where we can innovate that doesn't touch those areas. So I guess another thing I'll say is we are working on our API this year. So we had lots of people ask us for an API. So that is also coming out in the near future. Actually, we should have it under feature flag in the next couple of weeks. I was reviewing it this morning, right? So that's another thing that domainers want, is programmatic access to their domains. So we're going to be rolling that out. The biggest problem there is to just prevent abuse, right? So we will roll that out to our domainer club only first, because that's KYC, because otherwise people will just maximally abuse your endpoints. And yeah, so we have some more features coming for domainers.
It occurs to me, I don't know the scale of your company. I mean, we talked about domains under management, that sort of thing, but how big is your team at this point?
We're actually real small. We're 32 people. That's everything. And we see no reason to have to grow the team in order to do all the things we're doing. And when I say we're 32 people, that includes all of the customer support. That includes all of the business team. That includes all the marketing. That includes everything.
The dev side and everything.
Yeah. And that includes engineering for blockchain, right? Which is, extra work. That includes the engineering work around the registrar, the engineering work around the marketplace, and also our RSP license. And to top it off, we're also in the middle of our ISO certification. So we're able to do all these things because I think we have a very talented team. We're based here in the US. We have high-end devs who know what they're doing. We can ship a lot very quickly, and everyone's pretty autonomous. And it's great. I like that type of culture as opposed to having larger, more sprawling teams. And we'll see, but I'm impressed with, we're going to have, world-class API, world-class registrar, very strong marketplace. We're going to be able to run our own backend, all of that with a very tight team. And that helps obviously for our overhead, which, if we're aiming to be a low cost provider in this space, then that's important for us to keep the headcount low.
It helps being new too, kind of ironically, in that you're not dealing with all this technical debt. You're saying, hey, if we could build a great registrar from today using today's technology and not having all these things to worry about from the past, I'm sure that the clean slate can help.
Honestly, I think Google Domains was building a beautiful product when Google shut them down to focus 100% of the company's efforts on AI. And when we look internally at the company, I actually think Google Domains going out of the market gave us an opportunity that wouldn't have been there otherwise, because I think that they can write good code, right? So the Google engineers, they do a great job. They were using a clean slate, and we're actually building with a lot of their tooling. For our RSP backend, we're working with Nomulus, which is developed by Google, and they're still developing it, right, internally. So we're actually still in touch with that team. We see their PRs on the repo, right, because we go back and forth, and not go back and forth, but we have our own PRs, and we're tracking that repo as well. And they're going through their RST testing as well. So yeah, I think I was sad to see Google go out of business. And Google is famous for doing that. They'll build a product. Yeah, and then they'll shut it down. Everyone's like, what happened to Blogger or whatever it was? And this was another example of that. But we're happy to be able to pick up that mantle and run with it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, they ended up, I guess, selling that business to Squarespace, which is a very different model, obviously, than you guys, right? And the customer that you're trying to attract. Last time we talked about a year ago, you talked about kind of shifting away from blockchain and getting all the blockchain language away from everything so that those of us that don't know that technical side of it, we don't have to think about it. But I am curious, you have, when you list a domain on Unstoppable for sale, it does get syndicated to OpenSea, which of course a lot of people remember from the NFT craze. Are you seeing any buyer, any money coming into the space from kind of that crypto side?
Well, we're definitely seeing money come in from crypto. We are not seeing a lot of on-chain usage. And so those are two very different things. And I believe in hindsight that a lot of the on-chain push back in 2021 was, it was a failed experiment if you look at it. And I think that there's not a lot of reason for people to want to self-custody. And the average consumer doesn't want to. So it's 1% or less of the population that actually really cares about that. And that is not large enough to create a market for an economy to build up around it. And so we're continuing to scale back everything having to do with blockchain and Unstoppable domains. You will actually see updates to our website this quarter where we're going to be hiding even more, right? We've already hidden a lot of the on-chain stuff, but we're actually decoupling it even further and putting it under the surface and treating it more like a database, which is what it is, instead of treating it as like the right way for people to interact with the digital economy, which is what people were pushing back in 2021. Hey, you need to self-custody your assets like gold. You need to carry it with you in your pocket, and you don't want to trust a third party with it. And all that just created excess user confusion. So I'm pretty far away from crypto now, right? Like, I don't think I've been to a crypto conference in 1 or 2 years, at least a year, if not 2 plus. And, we don't have a lot of presence at those events anymore. I don't think they're important to the domains market. And the important markets for crypto right now are stable coins, getting stocks on chain, right? And then just Bitcoin as hard money. And those are kind of the 3 cycles. All the other stuff is by the wayside. And, I'm glad we pivoted our business because I don't think there is a very bright future for on-chain native assets that are self-custody.
It's funny. I think of the name of your company, Unstoppable Domains, and you have gone through several iterations of what your business model is. You pivoted a few times. I think originally when I think of Unstoppable is back when, hey, you can create a website on this Web3 and it won't be censored, that sort of thing. How do you feel your name is held up, though, now that you've shifted to your current model?
We talk about name change all the time. The problem is everybody knows this. So we have so much invested in brand inertia at this point. And so from this point, it's more the abstract view of like, do you want to be unstoppable? It's more like aspirational than it is a technical description of how, on-chain blockchains work with an IPFS hash, something like that. What we were back in 2019. And so that ship has kind of sailed, and now we're on this new direction.
Yeah, I kind of feel like it's held up pretty well. Like, you didn't call it blockchain or Web3, that sort of thing. I think the name was generic enough that, in a positive connotation, right, that I think it's actually aged pretty well.
Yeah, I have a comment on that, actually, which is there's a lot of new potential regulations coming down for domain names, and through the GNSO and other different governing bodies inside of ICANN, where they are creating new rules to fight botnets for
DNS abuse. You're speaking of.
Yeah, exactly, DNS abuse, and it's actually come up now where they're actively discussing basically KYCing people to buy domain names, and of course they say we want to KYC people to buy large numbers of domains, like 3,000 for a botnet or whatever, and there's some merit to it, but it's actually kind of funny because inside the DNS world itself, we still have to stand up and say, there's only one country in the world that requires KYC for launching a website, and that's China. And like, you don't want the rest of the world to be like that too.
Yeah. India's been flirting with that around their domains and putting regulations on companies there. And yeah, I think I remember actually when China, gosh, this is 10, 15 years ago, because GoDaddy used to offer .in domains. They might again, .cn domains from China. And then all of a sudden it was like, yeah, the Chinese government wants a copy of your ID if you want to keep your name, and it was like, wait a minute. And it's kind of funny to see how now 15, 20 years later, quote unquote, democratic governments are now looking at things like that and pushing for things like that.
So we attend those meetings now, right? And so I actually had to like raise my hand and be like, I had to reference it. I actually said recently, it's like the only place that requires an ID is China. And it's not something we should aspire to do. Like I had to say that out loud so that everyone kind of get it. And, I got accused back like, oh, well, we know you just want to sell domains, right? Because you're a domains company. I'm like, no, actually, like, yes, I do want to sell domains, but and so we're going back and forth. And my pushback is, I bet we can find other ways of identifying the botnet operators than requiring KYC from everyone who buys a domain name, right? Like I know that we can. And so now we want to make sure that we're talking about that in those meetings. So there's still a place for the little rebellious and software domains to kind of raise their hand inside the DNS space and be like, guys, we don't want to go down that road. The example I said is, we definitely want anyone in the world to be able to launch a blog without KYC, right? Because you may have something you need to say that's something really bad is happening or really good, and it's important for you to be able to publish. It's basically the right to publish, right? Which is the freedom of the press. And like, we can't take that away from anybody. And so we're going to have to figure out where the boundaries are and what makes people uncomfortable. And hopefully we can find some better technology for identifying these botnets. And my personal opinion is that the AI is going to make it extremely easy to recognize patterns of registration. And we'll see if that's true or not.
Yeah. Well, let's shift gears and talk about the registry side of the business. So new top level domain rounds coming out this year. I know you guys have made a lot of announcements around that. What are your plans?
Yeah. So I think as of right now, there's 10 to 20 new TLD strings that we will be going after, some for ourselves and some for partners. You can actually see what they are. If you go on our website, we have it labeled applying to ICANN. So you can see which ones that we're applying to in the search results, which is helpful because a lot of people want to know, like, hey, which ones are you guys applying for? And, we're talking to others in the industry too. And if you are in the industry, please give me a call or reach out. We're partnering with people on different TLDs as well. We're trying to figure out how that can work, but you can have multi-owners on some of these TLDs, which is nice. We also have our RSP license, so we want to run the back end for a lot of these if we can. And I think there's going to be a good opportunity here. I still believe that there's going to be people overpaying at this auction, but we'll see. The amount of momentum behind AI right now, I think, has kind of sucked the attention out of every other investment class in space. So that's going to be. I don't know how that's going to have an impact. You saw Namecheap just got acquired by that private equity firm. I don't know if they have an intention to apply for domains. I know Identity Digital just raised additional money in order to go to the auctions. So it's going to be interesting. The times are changing really fast, but we're still full steam ahead. I still think we're in the buying a couple dozen TLDs, area. And if things change, maybe we'll put our hat in the ring for more than that. But as of right now, I think that's the approach that we're taking for this next auction.
Yeah, I mean, so the last public, I think, funding round you had was 2022 for $70 million. Yeah, it strikes me that some of the names that you're interested in, so .crypto, for example, that you're applying for, that's going to sell for a lot of money, as are some others in auctions. So do you think you would go back to your existing investors if you saw the opportunities when it came time to auctions?
Yeah, we've already talked to them about that, but I honestly don't think that we will necessarily need to in some of these cases. So we'll see, but I just have a different assessment of the market. So we're going to see how expensive these things are. And if we need to go out and get additional funding, we'll do it. But we have plenty of time to do that. We've got 12 months, right? So not, and we were more than that, 16.
Let me make sure I understand though. So you're saying that AI is kind of sucking investment out of a lot of spaces. Are you saying that it's taking some attention away from crypto? And so you think some of the crypto TLDs might not sell for as much, like .wallet and that sort of thing?
I mean, if you look at AI investment, it's 90% plus of all venture capital funding. So yes, I think it's definitely like crypto is probably less than 5% of all funded companies right now. And then if you look at registrations on crypto TLDs, they're way down from where they were back in 2021. And these are long strings, right? So we talked about .wallet, that's a lot of characters. Same thing for .crypto. So I think cooler heads may prevail. We'll see. There may be someone who, bought 10,000 Bitcoin for a nickel.
Yeah, it's funny money to them. Yeah.
And they may want to come in and just bid a bunch of money on something, which is, you can't stop that. But ultimately, if you sit down and you pencil out the math, where do you think net new registrations are going to happen? And for me, continues to look like .com is going to do well because it has market presence. And then if you look at the TLDs that are selling, .ai, it's going to be hard to find a better string in the next round. So like .ai is such a good string. What are you going to do?
Oh, you're saying for AI companies, right? Yeah. It's not like someone would choose .artificial or .artificial intelligence instead of that.
Right. Yeah. So I think it's just by pure coincidence, the other most wanted string already existed. And if you look at domain sales, number one's .com. I think number two is .ai this year, probably on secondary. Last year, we should check.
On the secondary, yeah. Like as far as value, yeah, the names, yeah.
Yeah. And then the other ones, continues to be .co, .org, .net, and then .xyz. I think rounds it out. Maybe I'm missing one in there. But outside of those 5 to 10 top TLDs, not a lot of traffic. And I don't know why these specialized on-chain, blockchain, crypto TLDs would be expected to perform significantly better. We had a lot of interest in crypto back in 2021, but it's now 2026. It's a different climate now than it was then.
Okay, so when I was on your blog before this call checking, you guys have announced like .agent and .hub as applications sometimes when you're partnering with someone, but there were also announcements for new Web3 only namespaces on your blog. So why do you continue to launch those if you feel like maybe there's not much opportunity there?
So those are not conflicting with ICANN root space, right? So if we're in a case where someone wants to launch a on-chain TLD for their crypto cats NFT collection, then it's fine if those things are doing less than $20,000 a year in registrations. Like that's not a problem. But if you're an ICANN TLD, you have to pay $50,000 a year in fees to have a TLD. So in which case, those never make sense. So when we're talking to partners, that's like the first conversation. Are you thinking you can do more or less than $50,000 a year? If you're doing less, then you should not go to ICANN because it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And actually, you need to be doing significantly more. Anyone who runs a string will tell you it's like you want to have 100,000 registrations on that, and for that to make sense as a business. And the vast majority of these communities who want to launch these long tail strings are not that. And I don't think that they will ever be. And I don't think they will ever necessarily have conflict with ICANN because there's just no reason for ICANN to launch one of those in the future because there's no economic sense in having that string.
But do you think but you're going ahead and launching these names on behalf of these groups, right? You're partnering with them. So like .digital future, that sort of thing. Like I agree, that's never going to be an ICANN chain or on ICANN. But it sounds like you don't really feel like there's much value there either, right? So why continue to launch Web3 names like that?
I mean, there's also not much cost there, right? To launch Web3 domain names. And, why sell any product is because you think you can make a profit. So yeah, I think we can continue to make a profit on long tail Web3 names that don't compete with Web2 namespace now and into the indefinite future. But I don't think that it's an area that anyone will compete with us on because there's no sense in them trying to launch. Imagine GoDaddy trying to launch a .digital future. Like it's not going to happen because it doesn't make economic sense. So like it's a small niche. I think I've said this before, but I think the Web3 namespace at scale is a sub 20 million a year business, right? So where you're at, like then, that's fine. That's a market that we can continue to service because we already are in that market and we probably own 80% market share of that, which is great. And I'll continue to do that for forever. But, I have bigger ambitions than that. And so if I want to try to grow a bigger business, then I need to go into DNS where there's actually, a higher potential upside if we can get the right string and take it to market the right way.
So you've launched a lot of Web3s in the past where you got significant registrations kind of early on. .wallet, .crypto are two that come to mind. Let's say you win .wallet. Let's say you apply for it and win it. How will you run that? Like, what will your existing Web3 .wallet holders get as part of, like, will they get priority? Will they get, how will that work?
Well, so there's a couple things there. First of all, if they want to have a matching ICANN string, we have to run everything through the Sunrise and trademark registration process, ICANN. So that's going to be a first pass. It's like, hey, if you're conflicting in this, then sorry, you don't get to be priority on your domain registration because, sorry, this is a copyrighted or otherwise.
Trademark, yeah.
Right. So then after that, we are thinking those people will have priority registration on those strings in the upcoming, after they're delegated. And then we're thinking about what pricing will look like for those strings. We have to pay the ICANN maintenance costs, the RSP backend registration costs, just the annual fees for compliance is a few $1,000s a year across those TLD strings. And so we're going to pass those on to those end users as part of their registration. And then maybe the innovative thing that we are looking to do is to enable different pricing strategies for those domain names so that you could have a pay once or a rent every year strategy. So we have to get all of that through ICANN and have check all the boxes on that. But that's how we're currently envisioning it.
Yeah, because your crypto names were pay once, right?
That's right. It makes sense when you're doing it on a blockchain. It makes less sense when you have a regulator that has an annual fee.
Sure. Well, and it also, from a business model perspective, recurring revenue is pretty nice too. So,
yeah. Well, I know people. So just to be clear, I don't actually view it that way because any recurring revenue is just a discounted cash flow to a single amount, right? So you could, if you have a recurring revenue stream of $10 a year and a 10% discount rate, that's the same as a one-time $100 lump sum payment.
Right. Yeah. There was one registrar that tried to do kind of a forever domain at one point, and that kind of blew up for a number of reasons. But
well, we're going to try to do a modified version of that, but we'll have annual fees tied in to make sure that it can pay for the running of the registry itself. And then I think that we'll offer both options. So
yeah, interesting. Yeah, I've never heard of someone on the registry side looking at that. So that's definitely interesting. So to be clear, there might be some sort of maybe extra priority period for holders of your Web3 names, but TBD.
Yeah, and we also think there may be a premium charge for those early registrants because people registered very high value domain names, and if the bidding goes high for those names, we're going to have some way to recoup some costs, and we'll probably do it through premium registrations, and we're working through those lists now. So I'm sure we're going to try to make 80% of people happy, and that's going to be very tough, right? So we won't ever be able to make 100% of people happy. But I would just remind people when we launched these things, we had no intention of going to ICANN, right? We were pretty clear about that. And so this is an add-on feature for this domain set. And if you want to participate in this new upgraded version of the system, it's like buying the next version of software. There's going to be some costs associated with us having to make this move. I'm going to try to do it as nice as I can, but we're going to be, if we get into a bidding war for some of these TLDs, that's going to make it more expensive. And there's just no two ways around it.
Are you thinking about applying for any of these under the community?
No.
No. Okay.
No. So my read, and I know some people are applying as community, but I think it's very difficult to define yourself as a community without having some sort of recognition from some global body, right? Like if we were recognized by the UN for representing crypto, then I would apply for .crypto as community. But I don't think that we reach that standard. And I don't think that anybody else does either. I know some people are trying to do it. I think it's a waste of time and money. And I don't know why they would want to do that. It just feels like they're faking it. That would be maybe my summary.
Yeah, I don't know if it was you or your business partner, but again, this is way back when, was looking at that like, hey, if we get enough activity on our Web3, we might look there. So frankly,
we did look at it. So we went in. So to be clear, we thought, okay, can we get in under community application standards for ICANN because we already have an existing user base? And yeah, we felt like we could. But when you read into what a community is, it's supposed to be something like an ethnic group, right? Like you need to be like an Apache Indian tribe.
I agree with you. Now, last time some people did, there are some community top level domains out there where it's like, yeah.
Well, there's some, I think, did .gay get through finally as community? I don't remember. And then there were a couple of others. And we do have one applying for community this time. So it's not zero, but we have one that's specifically for women that is going through and they've applied under community. They've already been accepted into the next phase for ICANN. Like they already got their first round of feedback because that was last year. So I should restate that we have one TLD going through as community that we believe met the community guidelines, that we're working with a third party partner.
But that's kind of a community that came to you, right? And said, hey, we want to launch this top level domain. Yeah.
And then the real problem for ICANN is going to be conflict resolution for existing TLDs in blockchain and non-blockchain space. And that's still unclear how ICANN is going to handle that in this next round. So we're staying really closely abreast of how their communication's there. But I'm hoping that it will simply just be like some sort of technical test for collision, and they won't dig too much into it, because the truth is there's an infinite number of domain namespaces that have been created on the blockchain over the past 7 years, used by like 2 people. And if they start counting those as being potential conflicts for this round, then everyone's going to end up spending an extra $100,000 on lawyers and consultant fees for no reason to just waste time.
Yeah, well, last time they did it belatedly, kind of how they went around it. So at least this time they've done this before. They've looked at conflict and that sort of thing. So hopefully there won't be gaming, and there's always gaming, but it'll be interesting to watch for sure. So
my theory is they're going to just end up delaying people post application.
Yeah. Well, I guess they ended up killing a couple last time, like .home, and I don't want to misstate any others. So I think there were a couple others that were, we can't do this because too many companies have hardwired this into their internal system.
I think they're gonna take everyone's money first, and that will be their first screen, because there's a lot of people like, oh, I'm a community for DAR or whatever, and Doge or whatever, and then so they're just gonna see who actually will put in an application first. That'll be the first filter. That'll drop 90% of the noise, and then I think they're gonna have delays on certain strings because of this advocates trying to get some free money, basically, by trying to put in through this way.
It sounds like you've become very well ingrained in ICANN and policy and that sort of thing. I mean, I'm thinking back to some press releases from a year or two ago where I was like, do these guys know what they're doing? Because they were citing things that was So have you beefed up? Are you working with consultants or something like that? Or have you beefed up? Or are you guys still learning this as you go?
We have our own internal policy team now. So we had Sebastian Ducos join us. He's been in the industry for 15 plus years. He was previously at GoDaddy, and then before that, he was on the registry team over there. He's on the ICANN GNSO. He's a liaison to GAC, and I forget the registries he worked for prior to he put in 100 applications in the last round. So yes, we have consultants we work with. We also have our own internal policy person on the team who's taken us through this process, and so we feel like we know our stuff. And this is pretty fun. I have the applicant guidebook behind me.
Printed out. Yeah.
Yeah. I printed out because I'm old school, so like it's easier on my eyes. But I have the 400 pages, right? And I have been through this thing, and so we feel good about what we're doing. Now we don't know everything, but we have a pretty good handle on where we sit and what this business is. And we've also come to terms with that. 2021 was a crazy time. And I mean, it was a huge bubble. I think we're experiencing another bubble in AI, but it's not anywhere near over yet. And the things happen, right? So you have malinvestment, you have overinvestment in things that don't matter. And I think we have a lot of that in crypto, and the bubble popped, and we're on to the next thing. And we've accepted it fully at Unstoppable Domains and moved over to focus on the traditional domain name industry, trying to push progress here, and we're comfortable with it. Yeah.
I'll be, excited, obviously, to see. You guys have announced some domains you're going after. I mentioned .hub, .agent, I think .her, .twin. that you've mentioned. Some of these, obviously, .hub, I hear a lot of people are applying for, so it'll be interesting to see how that one plays out. But you can see a lot of these things through public announcements and such on unstoppabledomains.com, which is also where you'll find the domain name registrar if people want to check that out. And they're still offering these. You mentioned going to higher prices this year, but you're still offering some of these discounts. So people that want to get lower cost domains, and I think there's a short window still to do transfers and that sort of thing. So
I would say the first 3 months of this year, we still have incredible pricing. So we still have $5.99 Fridays, $5.99 any day registrations for Domainer Club. We still have transfer in starting at $5.99 for people coming through the Domainer Club. And we will be adjusting those prices, but you've got about 3 more months for these really strong promos. And then I do think that our standard pricing is also competitive. So we're $11.08 for renewals. We're going to get that under $11 probably in the next 3 or 4 months. So we're trying to bring prices down to be competitive. And we're still going to be competitive on transfer ins for pricing. And we're still going to try to do some promos on .com registrations for people this year.
All right. Well, Matthew, thanks so much for coming on the show today, talking about unstoppable domains.
Thank you for having me.
My guest this week has been Matthew Gould. He is the founder of Unstoppable Domains. That's a wrap on this week's Domain Name Wire podcast. You can listen to all previous episodes at dnw.com/podcast or on your favorite podcast app. Thanks for listening.